Let's turn the page to the essential nature of man. The essential nature of man. Man does have component parts. God, we know, has no component parts. We talk about the simplicity of God, that God is one being, not two. God is simple, not complex. He has one part, not multiple parts. The attributes are not parts of God, as if you could dissect God and say, here He is. Man, however, has two parts to him. There is, look at point B, point 2, man is both physical or material, and he is immaterial or non-physical. You've got a brain, and you know within yourself that you are separate from your body, but you're inseparably linked together. That there's an inner person and there's an outer expression. The outer part is your body. The inner part, whatever that inner part is, that's your soul or your spirit or your soul spirit or your soul and spirit, whatever view you're going to take on the dichotomy, trichotomy view. So, but what we can agree on is that man is both physical and non-physical, or material and immaterial. Look at Genesis 2:7. Then the Lord God formed man, bracket the phrase, of dust from the ground. I would call that physical or material, would you? God made us from physical material, the first man. And, bracket this, breathed into his nostrils, bracket this, breath of life. That's the immaterial part of us. God breathes into us life, and with that life comes the immaterial or non-physical aspect of our existence. Point B, the dust, physical particles of the earth provided the material, the breath of life, the spiritual life in the inner man provided the immaterial. The material part of man, this is point D, the material part of man's body eventually dies. The immaterial part of man's nature that relates to God, the soul spirit, is separate and distinct and lives on. I love 2 Corinthians 4:16. I love it more now that I'm in my 60s because it means a lot more to me now. Paul says, therefore we do not lose heart, but though our outer man is decaying, some more rapidly than others, but mine is decaying. Yet, here's the promise, our inner man is being renewed day by day. Here's the visual imagery. Your physicality is on a downward run. Your inner man spirituality can be on an incline. So that as your body is breaking down, your spirit is getting stronger and stronger and stronger. We would call that a work of grace. We would call that the fruits of sanctification. We would call that spiritual growth. We would call that movement towards glorification. But all of that simply means that we are working out our salvation, or we are growing with respect to our salvation. Outer man's falling apart, but the inner man, at least in theory, should be growing, developing, and so forth. All right? Well, enough of that dismal thought. Let's turn the page. Page 107. Obviously, in theology, as you discover, there are multiple views on everything. And so you, as a good theologian, have to go back later and chew on the gristle and figure out what you really believe and what you don't believe. And so consequently, we're going to give to you the two primary views. The dichotomy view is that man has two parts, the material and the immaterial. But notice that the immaterial, in parenthesis, is soul/spirit. Soul equals spirit. They're the same in the dichotomous view. You'll notice I have a bullet point, see page 104, two views concerning the constitution of man. The dichotomous view with arguments for and arguments against are found on page 104. For further study, if you're really interested in the makeup of man and the parts of man, you do a good study, and that's a good start for you. Two views of dichotomy. Look at point B, trichotomous, meaning three parts. Man's integrated with three parts. Man is body, that's physical. Man is soul, that's non-physical. Man is spirit, that's non-physical. And so you would appeal to some passages, and all of that is summarized on page 106. Arguments for and arguments against the trichotomist. I think very strongly that you can be dichotomous or trichotomous. It doesn't really matter. You got to wrestle with it. I just hope you're not monistic. That's point C. That man is one element and he just has different expressions. In other words, body, soul, spirit, man is all that one thing. And when the body dies, so does the soul and so does the spirit. Christian monists say that God then resurrects body and spirit and soul in one resurrection moment. But everything dies when you die. That runs to me counter to today you'll be with me in paradise. After you die, thief, you'll be with me in paradise. It'd be hard to be monistic and see that. Or to read the Apostle Paul in Philippians saying, you know, I don't know what to do. I'd prefer to die and be in the presence of Christ, but if I need to live on in this physical life, in this physical body, for your ministry's sake or for the ministry's sake, that's even better. To live as Christ, to die as gain. That doesn't make much sense with a monistic kind of view. So I would say that one is not one that I would certainly prefer, but you could be dichotomous or trichotomous and still be within the bounds of orthodoxy. Now here's a really tough question, beginning on page 107, and that's the origin of the immaterial part. Where does the soul or soul/spirit come from? And there are, obviously, three views, three theories. You have the theory of preexistence. Even the pagan Plato believed in the preexistence of the souls. He believed that all souls were eternal and just floating out there waiting to be born. Hinduism kind of believes somewhat the same thing through the process of reincarnation. That when you die, you're just waiting for the merry-go-round to come back around. You come back as something else based on karma. So consequently, preexistence as a theory has origins back in man's thinking. The view that souls have existed in a previous state and enter the human body at some point in the early development of the body. Plato, the early church father Origen, the philosophy called theosophy, Hinduism, Tenet, the philosopher, a more recent 20th century, I believe, philosopher, and others. It's hard to defend that view, but that's the pre-existent view. Here's one that's very, very common. The creation theory. This is the view that the soul, or soul spirit, the immaterial part of man, is an immediate creation of God. God has two kinds of creation. Immediate, where He directly creates. Mediate, where He works through other processes to create. You'll see that one to the third viewpoint. Immediate creation means that God, at the time of a human being, God is going to immediately create the soul at the point of conception. Some say at the point of the baby's animation, when it begins to move. Others say at the point of the baby's birth, when he takes his first breath. But the idea is that God creates the soul at that moment and sends it to the body, and when it has contact with the body, then that soul becomes sinful. That's the creationist theory. Church fathers, Ambrose, Jerome, Thomas Aquinas, Roman Catholicism, many Reformed theologians, Calvin, Wayne Grudem. There's a lot of strong support for the creation theory. But there's another theory, and I'm going to turn the page on this one. It's called the Traducian. It's from the Latin word tradux, and tradux means the branching of a tree. When you see a tree branching, and then the branches branch, and then the branches branch, and all of that. This one is rooted to the propagation of the human species. Mother and father produce a child, that child gets married, produces children, and branches out as well. Now here's the Traducian theory. This is the view that the human race was immediately created in Adam with respect to the soul as well as the body, and both are propagated by natural generation. You know what all that means? The soul and spirit and body are immediately created by God through human parents, which might explain why are we born sinful. You might recall that King David in Psalm 51 says that in sin did my mother conceive me. And so this view is to help us to understand how God does not create an evil or a sinful soul, but how God allows the natural propagation of the species of man and woman producing children. Those children will have their own children, and so forth. It branches all out, and all of that is God's creation through human agency to produce sinful human beings. That we get our sinfulness because we were there in Adam. If you take the covenant theologian's viewpoint that Adam is the representative or federal head of all of the human race, and that when Adam died, we all died with Adam, then we all are propagated out physically, and we are propagating that sinfulness because we all died in Adam. We're propagating that sinfulness in body as well as in soul. Are you familiar with the expression, "Oh, that boy, he is the spitting image of his daddy"? You know what it means? Spirit and image. He is the spirit and image of his father. The implication being not just that he looks like his daddy, but he kind of acts like his daddy. And that old expression sort of, if you get behind it a little bit, he sort of came from his daddy. He's his daddy through and through. And that his daddy has propagated both body as well as the spirit and image of the Son as well. That'd be the concept that would be very close, in a way, to the Traducian theory. The Traducian view challenges the creationist view of the inheritance of original sin. And that's where the debate begins. If you're wanting a better summarization, Millard Erickson will do it for you in the box in the middle of page 109.